Centric engineering. In this world, everything is fast, like Facebook, Uber, Verve, Crunchyroll, anything you talk about it, they have to move fast because the competition and also the kind of tools available made to the developers make things iterate faster. I would like to share different cycles, different approaches we've been using, and which one makes sense for us. And I believe most of us here are developers, front-end developers, iOS, majority I believe. Given that, I'll be focusing on mobile-centric product development. So let's say we are starting with a product called browser, just basically a simple browser to demonstrate the concept. Just swipe and then get the images and the title. This is the product, and obviously we are comfortable pulling the keyboard and then typing and build the stuff, right? However, there are several teams involved. We being the front-end developers, and this is a collaboration. There is a business, there's a product, designers, and front-end developers over there. On the back end, and the QA and DevOps when you want to put it in the real life. But that is the whole enchilada, whole 9 yards. And we are somewhere in the middle spectrum. And there are, of course, there are other stakeholders and engineers involved as well, but this is the majority. And given this, if somebody wants to create a product like in a movie browser, right, it is the instinct that, oh, okay, I'll work with a backend engineer, and he's going to create a RESTful API where I can pull the catalog, and then I create my client application. However, the traditional approach is like, you need to interact with the backend, and he's going to create a RESTful API, and it's going to be back and forth, and then you figure it out, okay, this payload works for me. And then he'll go back and build the backend, either MySQL or Cassandra, whatever it is, depending on the scale of the application. And then he'll build a server environment somewhere, and you integrate with the client. And we all know that that's the old style. That's why it's the old model. And doesn't scale. It might take a few weeks to months to sometimes even more than that. And second approach is server-side mocking. These days, teams are more efficient, intelligent. What they do is, hey, let's sit together right after we have designer and also the product requirements sketched out, and then we work with a semi-architect or a company-level architect and define, hey, how the API is going to look like, publish some RAML documentation around the API, given a call, give me the list of movie catalog titles, and then you start integrating against the mocked information, while the backend teams are in parallel building the backend and testing various hypotheses about the scale or optimization and user experience and all the stuff. But the development is going in parallel. And then you integrate and then test client. This is okay kind of thing. But this itself also takes days, weeks again. And then you lost the feedback. You cannot take this product to customer or focus groups to kind of get some feedback. Hey, do you want the title on the side or image to be in a different aspect ratio? It'll take a while to get to that. And this is the simplest use case we are talking, but in general, we are dealing with the more complex interactions and more complex operations, and information architecture is very complicated. So the front-end engineer, it has to be done more proactively. So the third option, and which I feel it's more efficient, So in the rapid prototyping, so we, as the front-end engineers, take the front seat, talk to the first iteration draft copy, talk to the back-end engineer. Hey, I think for this kind of product design, I might need this JSON structure and this information structure. First metadata, and then images, and then drill down to the detailed information. Is it okay if you give me some format, like NS array of dictionaries kind of thing, right? And then, oh yeah, seems like okay, but let me work on that. Meantime, you start creating a sample data for yourself, right? And just keep it somewhere on the JSON file. And then start working with that, but your focus is more on interaction, focus is more on layout, but the meat, the content is coming through this skeletal. And how do we optimize? Is again, iterations. You use that mock JSON put in a project and use some snippets. I'm going to share you. I think probably some of you are aware how to use that one. But the most of the application you are using is pretty much the client application. Once the backend service is ready, you can just swap it. It's as simple as it is. And then while the backend team is working on the real application, real APIs, and real environment, which would take significant amount of time, you are iterating constantly. You might be going to a designer or a stakeholder or a real customer, or maybe you're collecting the analytics information. See, which one is working, which one is not working. Is it way off from the designer? So that you'll have at least 10 iterations before the first version of the backend API is ready. And you might have 100 iterations before the backend first version is ready in a staging environment. So what it gives, it's more product-centric. It's not a complete system-centric. If you want to build an entire car and drive on the road and it's too late. So what you're trying to do is just take some wooden sticks and put it in place, making sure it looks like wheel, it looks like a car, and drive it on the road. That's the concept. The more you do it, the better it is for us. We efficiently use the time. We intelligently talk to the backend teams. It's not like backend teams is dictating, hey, here is the API, you deal with it, right? It is more like a conversation, dialogue, right? But the dialogue you're having is not only with the backend engineers, but the customers, the end users, the enterprise or consumer, whoever it is. And then finally, you integrate with the real one, and then you feel good about it and let it go in the wilderness and then figure it out. So that way we save a lot of time. So I'm going to show you a quick code snippet how this could be done. This is Objective-C. It's still old. I had to pull my old reference here. If you look at it, there is a main storyboard. Yeah, just empty collection view holder there, and then you see a card cell. That's pretty much, let me maximize here. So this is using, during the design, we are using some sample image created, let's say, in assets, right? You have a full image, you have a thumbnail image, that's it. This is just to get a feel of the design, where the text is going to be there, where the thumbnail is going to be, where the real image is going to look like. And then you have the controller logic. It's pretty much what it's doing is it registers a cell, how it's going to display, and then it's going to fetch data if you look at it here. The fetch data is doing, I believe everybody is using AF networking or equivalent library to fetch the API thing. It's making the same API call and then making the images URL, which I'm going to show you what it is. So this is pretty much the data. It's existing on Crunchyroll Tech Challenge place, and it's pretty much requesting the data using the AF networking call and then mapping it. If you look at it, if that service is already available, right? If whether the server is mocking or whether the system is functional, right? Then data will be data source will be available through a RESTful mechanism, and then you can run this code. However, let's say they're not ready and the environment is not ready. What do we do? The simplest thing what you could do is there is a URL cache mechanism we use for efficiently kind of serving some of the repetitive content on the local device side. And we hop on the same mechanism to say, hey, whenever I make a request for this kind of pattern, and open up a JSON file on my local device, and then serve the data from there. So that way you are in the train, or you are on the go, or the server is not available, whatever it is, you still have the working document for you to like iterate on, check the design and interaction. So that is done using, if you look at it, IR URL cache map that I created a while ago using NSURL. It's on the GitHub. I can share the details later. And it's pretty much is opening up that URL cache. If you look at it, it is guarded by debug so that it won't go to the production environment. And then you open that one, and here if you say you're training like a mock, given this, do that kind of thing, a general mocking principle. Given there is a GET request on this images.json, serve the data from sample JSON. If you look at it, the sample JSON is here. Like this is the original, and this sample is coming from here. And there may not be any network dependency here. And then remaining is, so you can change it, play with it, and you don't have to have any dependency on the server while you are iterating the product. And obviously, the final test would be integrating with the real application and real API and real environment. But do get to there if you can experiment, collect feedback, and correct it, and then come back. That will give you the best use of your time, and you will create something the users will like, and that will be the essence of everything. I can share the entire code in the GitHub if you want to take a look at it, just a refresher. That's the main thing. It's first time here. I believe you guys are very smart, but at the same time, having this focus, like where we fit in, and how do we collaborate and communicate with the other teams will yield the best results. That's the whole summary, point of this presentation. Hope you enjoyed the presentation.